Zanele had been dreaming about this day her whole life. Since she was a little girl, she imagined the perfect wedding, the colorful traditional attire, the sound of drums beating in joy, the singing, the dancing, the proud smiles of her family, and the love in her groom's eyes. Everything felt magical. Her heart was full as she stepped into the beautifully decorated venue in Ibadan, the air thick with celebration. Friends and family had come from far and wide, dressed in bright, flowing outfits. Cameras flashed. Music played. Zanele looked like a queen as she walked down the aisle, each step filled with hope. But just as she reached halfway down the aisle, something happened, something that changed everything. A loud voice cut through the music. "He's mine," a woman shouted from the back. Everyone turned, confused. A woman in a tight red dress stormed into the hall, pointing straight at the groom Chuka. The room froze. Gasps spread like wildfire. The drummers stopped. The dancing stopped. Zanele stood still, stunned as the woman repeated, "That man is mine." Whispers filled the air. Who was she? Was this a joke? Zanele's smile slowly faded. Her hands trembled. She turned to look at Chuka, hoping he'd laugh it off, say it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, anything. But instead his face turned pale. His eyes dropped. He didn't say a word. The perfect day that was supposed to be the happiest of her life had just turned into a nightmare. And it was only beginning. The hall was still silent when the woman stepped forward. Her voice shook, but it was clear. "My name is Anita," she said. "And I'm the woman Chuka truly loves. We were together just a few days ago." Her words hit like a slap. People gasped again. Some stood up. Others looked at Zanele, waiting for her reaction. But Zanele didn't move. She felt like the floor had vanished beneath her feet, like she was floating in a terrible dream she couldn't wake up from. Her heart was breaking, but on the outside she stayed calm. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at Chuka, the man she thought she knew, the man she was about to marry, and searched his face for answers. But Chuka didn't meet her eyes. His lips were pressed together, his hands shaking. He looked like someone who had been caught, not someone who was being lied about. Zanele felt like she couldn't breathe, but she kept standing. Her wedding gown suddenly felt too tight. The beautiful day she had imagined since childhood was falling apart, right in front of her. Piece by piece. She wanted Chuka to speak, to deny it, to fight for her. But he didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to the crowd. Not even to Anita. Anita, meanwhile, looked angry and hurt. "He promised me we'd be together. He said this wedding meant nothing. That he had no choice," she said. Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. Zanele's mind was spinning. She wanted to believe it was all fake, that this woman had made it up. But Chuka's silence spoke louder than anything. In that moment, everything Zanele thought was true shattered. The man she loved, trusted, and planned to build a future with had betrayed her in the worst way, and in front of everyone she loved. Still, she held her head high, even as her heart cracked quietly inside. The storm had arrived, but Zanele refused to fall apart. Not yet. Zanele stood there, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the whispers around her. She turned to Chuka, eyes filled with confusion and pain. "Say something," she whispered. "Please tell me it's not true." Her voice cracked, but she kept holding on, hoping he would deny it, hoping this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Her hands were shaking, her eyes begging him to fight for her, to say he loved her, to say Anita was lying. But Chuka said nothing. Not one word. He looked down at the floor like a child caught doing something wrong, but this wasn't a small mistake. This was her life. Her dreams. Her future. And his silence was louder than any confession. It was the kind of silence that breaks you. That tells you everything you didn't want to believe. Zanele felt her chest tighten. Tears welled up, but she refused to let them fall. All around them, people were stunned. Elders whispered. Family members looked away. The drummers had put down their sticks. The laughter was gone. This wasn't just a ruined wedding, it was a heartbreak witnessed by an entire community. Zanele took a deep breath. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached for the ring on her finger, the ring she once stared at with so much love and hope. She slid it off and held it in her palm for a second, almost like she was saying goodbye to a dream. Then she walked toward Chuka, gently placed the ring in his hand, and looked him in the eye one last time. "I deserved better," she said softly. And with that, Zanele turned and walked away. No screaming. No drama. Just quiet strength. The hall was silent as she left, her wedding dress brushing the floor, her back straight, even as her heart broke inside. But what no one knew was that walk wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The days after the wedding disaster felt like a blur for Zanele. Everywhere she turned, someone had a question, a comment, a rumor. People whispered in markets, her phone buzzed with messages, and her name floated through group chats like gossip fuel. But while everyone else was talking, Zanele was healing quietly, slowly, and with purpose. At first, the pain felt unbearable. She cried alone at night, wondering how the man she loved could betray her like that. She replayed the wedding day in her mind over and over, asking herself what signs she missed. But after a few weeks, something inside her shifted. She looked in the mirror one morning, eyes swollen from crying, and said out loud, "No more." She was done being broken, done being the victim. Zanele picked herself up and threw herself into her legal studies. She had always wanted to be a lawyer, and now she had a new reason. She wanted to fight for women like her, women who were lied to, hurt, and shamed, and who had to keep going anyway. Her pain became her fuel. Every page she read, every case she studied gave her more strength. She also started going to women's empowerment events in Lagos. At first, she sat quietly at the back. But soon she began speaking up, sharing her story. Other women came up to her afterward, hugging her, crying, saying, "Me too." It gave her power she didn't know she had. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't weak. She wrote in her journal one night, "They tried to break me in front of the world, but I will rebuild myself stronger, louder, and smarter." In front of the same world. Zanele made a promise to herself. Never again would she let anyone control her story. What happened at the altar was a chapter, not her whole book. And she was already writing the next one. A few weeks after the disaster in Ibadan, the internet exploded again. This time with photos of Chuka and Anita. They had gotten married in secret. No announcement, no family gathering, no traditional drums or dancing. Just a small ceremony quickly done. And suddenly their social media pages were filled with smiles, matching outfits, and cheesy captions like "Forever my soulmate" and "What's meant to be will always find its way." People talked, of course. Some said Anita won. Others called it true love. But Zanele knew better. She looked at their pictures and saw something else: desperation. A forced fairy tale. It was all too perfect, too posed. And deep down she knew they were trying to convince the world, and maybe even themselves, that everything was fine. But what they didn't know was that Zanele had her own secret. While they were busy posting and pretending, Zanele had been digging. And what she found made her heart race. Not with sadness, but with fire. She discovered bank statements, property documents, and signed forms she never remembered signing. Her name was on things she never approved. Loans taken. Money moved. And it all traced back to one person, Chuka. He had used her. Not just emotionally, but financially. He had taken her love, her trust, and her future, and turned it into the foundation of his new life with Anita. But now Zanele had the proof. Real solid proof. And she knew exactly what to do with it. She didn't rush. She didn't react online. She let them keep posting their perfect love story. Let them enjoy the spotlight. All while holding the evidence that would destroy everything they thought they built. Zanele smiled to herself one evening as she looked at their latest post. Anita in white, Chuka kissing her cheek. The caption said, "Nothing can break us." Zanele whispered to her screen, "We'll see about that." Zanele had always trusted Chuka with everything. Her heart, her dreams, even her future. What she never expected was that he'd betray her in the worst way possible, by stealing from her. It started when she checked her email one night and saw a message from a loan company she didn't recognize. First she thought it was spam, but something about it made her pause. She opened it, and what she found made her stomach drop. There was a loan. In her name. A big one. Confused and panicked, Zanele started digging through old emails, messages, and bank statements. The deeper she looked, the clearer it became. Chuka had taken out multiple loans using her name and details, loans she never signed for. He had used her documents, her ID, and even forged her signature. And where did all the money go? To the new life he built with Anita. The house they posed in online, paid for with stolen money. The furniture, the fancy appliances, the flashy wedding photos, all funded by debts Zanele was unknowingly tied to. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. First she felt sick. Angry. How could someone do that to a person who loved them? But that pain quickly turned into something sharper: focus. Zanele printed every document, saved every screenshot, and organized everything in neat files. She contacted a lawyer, then another. She wanted to be sure. No mistakes. No missed details. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. While Chuka and Anita flaunted their fake fairy tale, Zanele was preparing something stronger than a clapback post. She was preparing a case. She kept quiet, didn't alert them, didn't say a word. Let them laugh now, she thought. Let them keep pretending. Because soon they'd be facing the truth. And this time it wouldn't be in front of flowers and guests. It would be in front of a judge. The courtroom was packed. Some came out of curiosity, others for support. People whispered as they waited for the hearing to start. At the front sat Chuka, dressed in a plain suit, trying to look calm. Anita was next to him, holding his hand tightly, her eyes scanning the room nervously. They hadn't seen Zanele yet. Then the doors opened. Zanele walked in slowly, confidently, dressed in a sleek black outfit. Her hair was done, her head held high. She didn't look broken. She didn't look bitter. She looked powerful. All eyes turned to her. Even Chuka looked stunned for a second. This wasn't the woman who had been humiliated on her wedding day. This was a woman who had turned her pain into power. Zanele took her seat and waited quietly. When the judge finally entered, everyone stood, and the room fell silent. Then it began. Zanele's lawyer stood and spoke clearly. Your Honor, this case is about betrayal, but more importantly, it is about fraud. Financial fraud and emotional damage that has affected my client's life and future. One by one, they laid it all out. The forged documents. The loans in her name. The house Chuka and Anita lived in, all bought with money that wasn't his. Every piece of paper was real. Every screenshot backed up her story. Zanele had done her homework, and it showed. The judge listened closely, nodding as the evidence piled up. When Chuka's lawyer tried to argue, it fell flat. The silence from Chuka that once hurt Zanele now helped her because there was nothing he could say. Anita looked more uncomfortable by the minute. She whispered to Chuka, her grip on his hand loosening. The fairy tale was cracking. When it was Zanele's turn to speak, she stood up and looked directly at the judge. I didn't come here for sympathy, she said. I came here for justice. He didn't just break my heart, he broke the law. The judge leaned back, looked over the files again, and nodded. The court finds the defendant guilty of fraud and deceit. And the courtroom was silent when the judge finally gave the verdict. Everyone held their breath. Then came the words that changed everything. This marriage was built on fraud. It is hereby annulled. Just like that, Chuka and Anita's marriage was no longer legal. Gasps rippled through the room. Anita's face went pale. She turned to Chuka, eyes wide, as if hoping he would say something, anything to fix it. But just like on Zanele's wedding day, he said nothing. He just stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. The judge didn't stop there. He ordered Chuka to pay back every single cent he had stolen, the loans, the interest, the damages. It was a huge amount. Zanele didn't even blink. She just nodded slowly, calm and collected. She had waited months for this moment. She had cried, bled, and rebuilt herself for this day. And now justice was finally hers. Anita, on the other hand, broke down. Right there in the courtroom. The tears started quietly at first, then came the sobs. She realized what had been true all along. She wasn't the love story. She was the cover-up. A distraction. A pawn in Chuka's selfish game. He had used her, just like he used Zanele. The difference was Zanele had escaped. Anita had married into the lie. People watched in shock as Anita wept, mascara running down her face. Chuka didn't even comfort her. He just sat frozen, his life unraveling piece by piece. Zanele didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply stood up, picked up her files, and walked out of the courtroom with her head held high. Her heels echoed through the hall like a victory drum, not loud, but steady. She didn't have to say a word. The truth had spoken for her. And this time, no one could take that away. Zanele didn't just move on, she rose. After the courtroom battle, after the lies, the tears, and the betrayal, she stepped into a new version of herself. And this time, she wasn't doing it quietly. Her glow-up wasn't just about looks, even though she looked stunning, always poised, always confident. It was deeper. It was in the way she carried herself. The way she spoke. The way she turned her pain into purpose. She started small, writing about her experience on social media. At first, it was just one post. Honest. Raw. No filters. She talked about the wedding crash, the silence, the fraud, and the courtroom. She didn't write as a victim, she wrote as a woman who had survived something big. The post went viral overnight. Comments poured in. Thousands of women responded saying this is my story too. That's when Zanele knew this was bigger than her. She launched a foundation called the Betrayed Bride Project. It wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about giving women legal help, emotional support, and a space to be heard. Women from all over Nigeria, and even across Africa, reached out. Some were dealing with cheating partners. Others with financial abuse. Many had never told anyone what they were going through until they found Zanele. She began speaking at events, appearing on podcasts, sitting on panels about women's rights, marriage laws, and emotional abuse. Her face started showing up on magazine covers with headlines like, From Broken to Bold, and The Woman Who Walked Out and Won. But through it all, Zanele stayed grounded. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing change. Her story gave other women the courage to speak, to walk away, to take their power back. And every time she held a microphone or sat across from a broken-hearted woman, she remembered the girl who walked down the aisle full of hope and walked out with nothing. Now she had everything, not just success, but strength. Not just a glow-up in photos, but in purpose. Months had passed since the chaos, the courtroom, and the headlines. Life had changed in every way for Zanele. She was no longer just the woman whose wedding got ruined. She was the woman who took her pain and turned it into something powerful. People had followed her journey from heartbreak to healing. And now they were waiting for one final word from her. And Zanele knew exactly what to say. One evening she sat down, opened her phone and typed slowly. No edits. No filters. Just truth. She posted a single photo of herself, standing in front of a mirror, glowing in a bold red dress, eyes clear, shoulders back. And then the caption. You crashed my wedding thinking you ended my story. But all you did was start a new chapter. You thought you embarrassed me, but you exposed the truth. You thought I would break, but I built. You thought I'd stay silent, I found my voice. I didn't just walk down the aisle that day. I walked through fire. And I came out stronger. Now I don't walk for anyone else's approval. I walk in power. I walk in purpose. I walk for every woman who thought she wouldn't survive what broke her. This is my story. I rewrote the ending. Within hours, the post went viral. Thousands shared it. Women around the world commented with hearts, fire emojis, and messages like, You're a warrior. And thank you for saying what so many of us feel. Zanele didn't reply to every message. She didn't have to. Her words said it all. She wasn't the girl left at the altar anymore. She was the woman who took back the pen and wrote the ending herself.